Hello, today we're going to look at a regression analysis using dummy variables, so basically ones and zeros. And this is very useful when we are doing any kind of operations analysis because it could be things like we turn on and off factors that we're using, or we're going to use them to identify different pieces within the whole. So what we're going to look at today is we've got a company that produces a single product at 3 different manufacturing plants, and the company wants to regress total cost on units produced, but it suspects that there's a relationship between those variables. Basically, they think that the cost might be different across the 3 plants. And what they have on the next tab here is data from the past 16 months. And so how can the company use dummy variables to estimate the relationship between the total cost and the units produced across the 3 plants simultaneously? And we'll go look at the data here in a second, but we're going to build a multiple regression model. Then we're going to use that regression model to predict the total cost for each month and plant combination. Then we're going to estimate, not really estimate, sorry, we're going to check our accuracy on a regression analysis by using absolute error measurements and mean absolute percentage error measurements, so May and MAPE. And then we're going to determine the predictions that are within $1,000 of the actual cost, as well as predictions that are within 1% of the total cost. So let's go look at our data. And so the data they've given us is we have data in the month, we have the plants numbered 1, 2, and 3, and we have the amount of units produced at each plant. And then here we have the total cost of each plant. So at this point, what we're going to need to do is we are going to want to put everything together with our dummy variables. Now, what I'm going to do, since we're going to have to do some editing on this data to have things work, I'm going to restructure the data here just to make things a little bit easier. You might remember in the last video I said I like having the total cost in the first row, so all the x's in there next. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals that, because I just want to pull that data straight over. And let's pull that straight down. The reason I can't double click is there's no data in this column here, so it has no idea what it's doing. And so I'm actually just going to pull this across and then delete most of it. I did that because when I moved it across there, it will keep the formatting. So when I go to type something in here, it'll be bolded and have the line. And so also I want to take this row, we are going to make it currency, and I'm going to get rid of the zeros just to clean it up so it looks the same as what we have here. Okay, and so that's great. Now we need to distinguish between plants 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not going to just flat out run the regression analysis with a column for 1, 2, and 3. I'm only going to use dummy variables for plant 2 and 3. So basically, as the regression runs, if it's not plant 2 and it's not plant 3, then by default it's going to be plant 1. Why do I do it this way? I'm doing it this way because I want to see the difference between the 3 plants, and it's a more accurate way of doing it than other ways where it can be done. So the next thing I want to do is I want the total number of units produced. So each one of these columns after the first one are going to be our x variables. So, oh, that's an issue. I didn't want to do that. Since that first one is bolded, I don't want to drag that down. I want to drag a non-bolded one down. And so, once again, oops, let's highlight this. This is that's my y variable. This is one of my x variables. Okay, and so now we're going to make 2 dummy variables. We're going to have plant 2, and we're going to have plant 3. And so now what we're going to do is we just need to write a statement to figure out whether or not is this plant 2? So if it is plant 2, it will show up as a 1. If it's plant 3, it'll show up as a 0. If it's plant 1, it'll show up as 0. So if. Now what's the logical test? Well, I want to know, is that value there, is that equal to 2? If it is equal to 2, I want you to drop a 1. If it's not equal to 2, I want you to drop a 0. Okay, we've got a 0 there. That is definitely not plant 2. That's what we expect. Drag that down. You'll see that every time we hit plant 2, we have a 1. We can do the same thing with plant 3. So if this cell, if it equals 3, value of true, well, if it is 3, I want 1. If it's not 3, I want 0. So basically turning on and off that part of the regression analysis. Okay, so now I have my y variable, my dependent variable, which is total cost, in terms of our x variables, the independent variables. Y is dependent because it's dependent on the x values. So the independent variables, the x variables, are going to be how many units we produced, is it produced at plant 2, is it produced at plant 3. And so if it's produced at neither plant 2 or 3, it will give me a 0 because that's the default. Okay, at this point we're going to go into our data. We're going to go into analysis and pull up regression. By the end of this course, you should be really good at that because we'll be doing it so much. So the input, the y range. Once again, I highlighted a blue, so we'll go pick our y. That's our independent variable. And our dependent variable, I keep saying that backwards, that's our dependent variable. Our independent variables are all 3 of these here. And this is kind of why I restructured it, because we could have done the plant 2 and 3 here, but then we'd have to start splitting it up, and it makes it more difficult. We do have labels. That's at the top. We have the labels there, because if we didn't have the labels there, when we do our regression, it would go intercept variable 1, variable 2, variable 3. And I like being able to see exactly what they are, especially as the regression gets bigger, because you have different, you'll have different, it'll be easier to look at things and go, oh, that's the variable for this. Oh, that's the variable for that. We don't need to calculate any of that, but we do want to place the output range, and we'll put it just right here, so we'll drop it all down. And I believe that's all we need. We'll hit OK, and there we go. It spits it out. Let's make sure that everything is in such a way that we can look at it. Let's see. Those are the important. Well, you know what? Let's just do all of them. I'll just highlight all these, double click one of them. Just best fits all of them. Okay, and so this will be the end for this video. In the next video, we're going to go through what all this stuff means.